most of them are still connecting from Partridge Family, which absolutely amazes me.
Yeah.
And as you know, that when you appear in people's living room, they feel a connection with you.
Right.
That's very intimate.
Especially if they catch you stealing something.
Why did Susan Dey, the shining star of the Partridge Family, refuse to attend the cast reunion after so many decades? In the 1970s, the Partridge Family was one of America's most beloved sitcoms, a musical household filled with laughter and joy, symbolizing unity and happiness. Yet behind that perfect image lay emotions that were never resolved, and a private relationship that left wounds too deep to ever heal. By 2024, new revelations finally shed light on the real reason Susan Dey declined to reunite with her former castmates. Whatever the cause, it remains one of the most heartbreaking stories in classic television, when a once inseparable on-screen bond ended in silence and distance. What started it all? And who pushed her to make that decision? Stay with us until the end to uncover the truth. Between the spotlight and real life, the Partridge Family shared a bond that few viewers ever noticed. Shirley Jones, who played the kind-hearted mother Shirley Partridge, was in fact the real-life stepmother of David Cassidy, the actor who portrayed Keith Partridge, the eldest son of the musical family. Off-screen, Shirley had married Jack Cassidy, David's biological father, in 1956. At the time, she was only 21, while he was 29, a charming, magnetic Broadway star, and the first man she ever truly fell in love with. In her memoir, Shirley recalled that Jack taught her everything about life, from art and wine to the meaning of loving and being loved. The couple had 3 sons together, Sean, Patrick, and Ryan Cassidy, all of whom followed their parents into show business. But after nearly 2 decades, what had once been considered one of Hollywood's golden marriages began to crack. Shirley discovered that her husband had not only been unfaithful multiple times, but also struggled with alcoholism and inner conflicts about his own sexuality that even he couldn't fully explain. She admitted forgiving him again and again, yet Jack's jealousy and erratic nature, especially after the Partridge Family made her more famous than him, turned their home life into a nightmare. They divorced in 1974, the same year the show ended, as if both their on-screen family and real family fell apart together. Despite the split, Jack still hoped for reconciliation. Shirley tried to move forward with strength, but deep down, her love for him never completely faded. She later said, "If Jack were still alive, I probably would have never remarried." But that chance never came. On December 12, 1976, Jack Cassidy was killed in a fire at his West Hollywood apartment. Investigations revealed that he had fallen asleep while smoking after a night of heavy drinking. The cigarette dropped onto the couch, igniting a blaze that spread quickly. The smoke filled the room, and his body could only be identified through dental records. Shirley received the news the next morning and broke down completely. She later said, "I didn't want him to come back, but he left this world not knowing that I had changed my mind." That tragic death didn't just end the life of a Broadway talent. It left a scar that never healed in Shirley's heart and in the hearts of their children. In those painful years that followed, David Cassidy, Jack's son from his previous marriage, became her emotional anchor. They grew close, like real mother and son, sharing grief and holding on to the memory of the man they both loved in their own way. But over time, a quiet distance began to form between Shirley and David, not out of resentment, but because of David's private struggles with alcohol, loneliness, and wounds no one could reach. Shirley once said she loved him as if he were her own child, but there are some doors that only David himself could open. The bond that once united them through music and family now lingers only in memory. Like an old song, each of them hearing it differently. On the surface, the Partridge Family looked like one of the greatest success stories of early 1970s American television. A global hit series, millions of albums sold, and a theme song, I Think I Love You, that even surpassed the Beatles' Let It Be to reach #1 on the Billboard charts in 1970. But behind those glittering lights, the show's true hero, David Cassidy, earned almost nothing. When David stepped into the role of Keith Partridge, he was barely in his 20s, eager to work, unaware of the true power of fame. In his memoir, Come On, Get Happy, Fear and Loathing on the Partridge Family Bus, he recalled that at first it felt thrilling to see my face on the cover of magazines like Tiger Beat. He answered every interview, talked proudly about where he lived and what he bought, just another young star enjoying success. But only months later, things spiraled out of control. Fans crowded outside the studio gates, followed him home, knocked on his door at midnight, and everything happened so fast I couldn't even go to the store anymore. America was deep in the grip of Cassidy mania. Teen magazines, fan clubs, t-shirts, posters, lunchboxes, dolls, all carried his face. The Baltimore Sun described how teenage girls' bedrooms were covered in his pictures, to the point where their buying power helped reshape the entire teen culture. Yet amid the frenzy, David discovered a bitter truth. He wasn't earning a cent from anything bearing his name. One day, he approached Chuck Laufer, who ran several major teen magazines at the time, and asked them to ease up on the constant coverage. Laufer just laughed and said, "We've paid a lot of money for the rights to use your name. From now on, it all belongs to us." In that moment, David realized he was no longer a person. He had become a product, a best-selling face that an entire industry was exploiting. Ironically, while his image covered America, David's actual salary was only $600 a week, from which 10% went to his agent, 15% to his manager, leaving him with almost nothing. No record royalties, no merchandise percentage, and a binding 7-year contract. While the Partridge Family made millions each week, the man who turned it into a global phenomenon couldn't even afford a new car. That contrast between dazzling fame and grim reality not only shattered David's faith in the industry, but also planted the seeds of lifelong emotional wounds. Because, in the end, he learned one cruel truth about Hollywood. Sometimes the brightest stars are the ones sold for the cheapest price. While the Partridge Family turned David Cassidy into a global teen idol, another star of the show also reached the height of fame, Shirley Jones, the woman who would define the image of the ideal mother on American television for more than half a century. Born in 1934 in Pennsylvania, Shirley Jones grew up in a middle-class family where music was a constant part of life. Gifted with a clear lyrical soprano voice and formal training, she soon found her way to the Broadway stage. In 1955, she made her film debut in Oklahoma, and quickly followed it with acclaimed performances in Carousel and The Music Man. By 1960, she had won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her daring role in Elmer Gantry, proving she was not just the sweet ingenue, but an actress of remarkable emotional depth and professional strength. Yet the greatest turning point in Shirley's career came not from the big screen, but the small one. In 1969, she was offered the role of Carol Brady in The Brady Bunch, but turned it down, saying she found the part too one-dimensional. "I didn't want to be just another mom coming out of the kitchen wearing an apron," she once said. That decision led her to the role of a lifetime, Shirley Partridge in The Partridge Family, 1970 to 1974, a widowed mother of 5 who turns her family into a touring pop band. That character completely changed how Americans viewed women on television. Before her, TV mothers were often portrayed as gentle, dependent, and forever tied to the stove. But Shirley Partridge was something else entirely: independent, intelligent, determined, and full of energy. She wasn't just a caregiver, she was a leader, an artist, a source of inspiration. In an era when women weren't supposed to be the breadwinners, Shirley Jones became the face of quiet revolution. Thanks to the Partridge Family, Shirley Jones was hailed as America's mom, the ideal mother figure for an entire generation. Millions of viewers saw her as a symbol of warmth, love, and resilience. She received multiple Golden Globe nominations for her role and was later honored by the American Film Institute, AFI, as one of the most influential women in the history of modern sitcoms. However, that very success became a double-edged sword. After the show ended, Shirley found it difficult to land new roles, as both audiences and producers saw her only as the gentle, nurturing mother, forgetting the Oscar-winning actress she once was. "I loved playing Shirley Partridge," she half-joked in an interview, "but she swallowed me whole." Refusing to be typecast, Shirley returned to her theatrical roots on Broadway, performing in 42nd Street, Showboat, and The Sound of Music, reaffirming her timeless talent. At the same time, she became an active humanitarian, supporting PETA and other animal welfare organizations, using her fame to advocate for kindness and environmental awareness. Now in her 80s, Shirley Jones still carries herself with grace, her voice warm, her presence radiant, the aura of a woman who has lived fully in the spotlight. To millions of Americans, she is more than an actress. She is a living television legend, the woman who turned the image of the supporting mother into the beating heart of the story, leaving an indelible mark on the memory of popular culture. If Shirley Jones represented gentleness and responsibility, David Cassidy embodied youth, light, and tragedy. Through the Partridge Family, he became a cultural phenomenon, the man every girl loved and every boy wanted to be. But behind the screams of adoring fans and the sea of posters bearing his face was a lonely soul slowly falling apart under the weight of fame. From the early 1970s, Cassidy was swept into an unprecedented wave of idol hysteria. Chaotic concerts, fainting fans, home invasions, even girls sneaking into his car just to spend the night near their idol. His fame exploded so quickly that he could no longer live as a normal person. Cassidy once said, "People were buying everything with my face on it, and I didn't even know who I was anymore." Behind the glitter stood the shadow of his father, Jack Cassidy, also an actor and a severe alcoholic. That addiction, like a hereditary curse, slowly consumed the son. By the late 1980s, David had fallen into alcoholism, and for more than 3 decades he battled relapse after relapse. Between 2010 and 2014, he was arrested 3 times for driving under the influence, twice within 6 months, and entered rehab in Florida. Each time he expressed remorse, but the illness always waited for him. In a 2014 interview with Piers Morgan, David Cassidy broke down in tears, admitting that if he took even one more drink, he would lose everything: his body, his mind, his soul. He called it the most shameful truth of his life, yet one he could no longer deny. He recalled one night kneeling in prayer, feeling something pass through me, a lightness, a relief, thinking he had finally been saved. But only a few years later, everything fell apart again. In February 2017, during a show in Agoura Hills, California, David stumbled across the stage, slurred his words, and forgot lyrics, leaving the audience in shock. TMZ released the video, and the world assumed he had relapsed. David denied it, claiming he suffered from dementia, the same disease that had taken both his father and mother. Appearing on Dr. Phil, he insisted, "I wasn't drunk. I just have memory loss." But only months later, in November 2017, David Cassidy died of liver failure at the age of 67. Later, the documentary David Cassidy, The Last Session, A&E, revealed a truth that left the world stunned. In his final days, David confessed over the phone to producer Sarah Lena Winefield that he had still been drinking. His voice was weak, but lucid enough to admit, "There is no sign of dementia. It was complete alcohol poisoning. I lied about drinking. I did it to hide the sadness and the emptiness." His family and friends were devastated. His daughter, Katie Cassidy, said she had believed her father had been sober for years. Former co-star Danny Bonaduce spoke with quiet sorrow. "Part of alcoholism is lying. When you're an addict, you can't be honest. But still, it's a tragedy." And indeed, it was. David Cassidy didn't die from fame. He died from the emptiness that fame left behind. In his final years, he had written a single line on a piece of paper. "So much wasted time. Too much time lost." And that was all that remained of a man the world had once loved with all the passion of its youth. When the Partridge Family ended in 1974, each cast member embarked on a completely different path. Like musical notes breaking away from a once harmonious tune, each carrying its own story, often heartbreakingly opposite from the others. In the Partridge Family, Danny Bonaduce was only 11 years old when he brought to life the sharp-tongued, quick-witted, red-headed boy who kept the show's humor alive. Yet few knew that behind his bright smile lay a childhood filled with violence and fear. Born in 1959 in Pennsylvania, Danny was the son of Joseph Bonaduce, a well-known television writer and producer, but also an alcoholic, hot-tempered, and abusive father. In his memoir, Danny recounted being beaten, insulted, and so terrified that he often slept in his car or at friends' houses to avoid the next outburst. "I just stayed quiet," he said on the Biography channel, "because if I fought back, it only got worse." In 1970, when he was cast as Danny Partridge, the once miserable boy suddenly became a national star. The show brought him laughter and money, but not happiness. No one knew that after filming each day, Danny would return to a home where violence and loneliness awaited. Early fame left him lost, and after the show ended, he spiraled into a world of alcohol, drugs, and Hollywood scandals that tabloids devoured relentlessly. The lowest point came in 1990 when he was arrested in Phoenix, Arizona, for assaulting a homeless man. When police arrived, they found him heavily intoxicated. Danny later admitted, "I lost everything: my job, my reputation, and my faith in myself." After years of recovery, Danny reinvented himself as a successful radio host, rebuilding his life with humor, self-awareness, and a rare willingness to talk openly about his past mistakes. Shows like The Danny Bonaduce Show and The Adam Carolla Show turned him into one of America's most beloved bad boys, proof that even from the ruins, redemption was still possible. Danny didn't stop there. In the 2000s, he ventured into amateur wrestling, appearing in Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling and several charity events. He once said, "In the ring, I can control the pain, unlike in my childhood." In his personal life, Danny married 3 times and struggled with bouts of depression, yet he remained resilient and sober. In 2023, he revealed that he had been diagnosed with a rare neurological disorder that affected his balance, forcing him to undergo skull surgery to relieve brain pressure. Even so, he continued hosting his radio show, and listeners saw in him a man who had learned to accept his past instead of running from it. Today, Danny Bonaduce lives in Seattle with his wife Amy and still hosts the morning show on KZOK-FM. He rarely talks about fame anymore, but whenever the Partridge Family is mentioned, his voice softens. Bonaduce calls it the most beautiful dream of his life, a dream it took him a lifetime to wake from. A boy once beaten, addicted, and mocked by the world ultimately found a way to stand again, not to shine, but simply to survive and smile. Among the child faces of the Partridge Family, Brian Forster stood out, not only because he replaced Jeremy Gelbwaks as Chris Partridge, but because of the literary lineage flowing through his veins. He is the great-great-great-great-grandson of famed novelist Charles Dickens, through his mother, actress Jennifer Rain. Born on April 14, 1960 in Los Angeles, California, Brian grew up amid Hollywood's cinematic buzz, yet he never saw himself as a star. In 1971, at just 11 years old, Brian was invited to join the Partridge Family, taking over the role of young drummer Chris Partridge from season 2 onward. He appeared throughout the show's final 3 seasons, becoming a familiar face to young audiences. Though in reality, he didn't actually play the drums, only mimed along behind the scenes. The series brought Brian recognition, but it never made him fall in love with fame. When the Partridge Family ended in 1974, Brian almost completely vanished from the screen. No acting career, no pursuit of stardom, simply walking away as if it had never happened. Instead of continuing as an actor, Brian chose a completely different path. He became a race car driver and professional stuntman in Northern California. Amid the roar of engines and clouds of dust, he found something Hollywood could never give him: truth, speed, and the raw feeling of being alive. In a rare interview, he once said, "On the track, everything is real. There's no script." It was a simple yet powerful life philosophy from someone who had faced cameras since childhood and realized early on that not everyone is meant to live under the spotlight. Today, Brian Forster lives quietly in California, occasionally appearing at fan conventions or the Partridge Family reunions. Without titles or memoirs, he prefers to remain simply someone who once lived a beautiful chapter of childhood, then gently closed it. While many of his former co-stars struggled to escape their past fame, Brian let it go with ease, much like the characters in his ancestor Charles Dickens novels, stepping off the stage to return to real life, where a person can truly be themselves. Jeremy Gelbwaks, who originally played Chris in the show's first season, had a very different story. Forced into acting by his parents, the young boy never enjoyed performing. Tension with the cast and crew led to his departure after just 1 year. The studio replaced him without a single complaint from the audience, a bitter milestone for a child forgotten amid Hollywood's glittering world. If the Partridge Family was television's most joyful family melody of the 1970s, then Suzanne Crough was its sweetest, most tender note. The little girl with curly brown hair, gentle smile, and a tambourine always in hand beside her on-screen mother Shirley captured the hearts of viewers across America with her innocence and warmth. But once the laughter faded, Suzanne chose a different life, simple, far from fame, and one that ended in quiet heartbreak. Born in 1963 in Fullerton, California, Suzanne was only 7 when she joined the Partridge Family in 1970. Though she played a small role within the musical family, she became the child's heart of the show, a symbol of purity amid a world of complicated adults. After the series ended in 1974, she took on a few minor roles in Teen Angel Returns, 1989, and Mulligan's Stew, but by her early 20s, she had left Hollywood entirely. Unlike many other former child stars, Suzanne never tried to cling to show business. She studied business, worked in retail, and eventually opened a small bookstore in Nevada, where she lived for many years. She married William Condrey, a technical engineer, and became the devoted mother of 2 daughters. To her neighbors, she was a kind, friendly woman who smiled every time someone mentioned her TV days, but she never flaunted her past. Tragically, the quiet life she built ended far too soon. On April 27, 2015, Suzanne Crough passed away at her home in Laughlin, Nevada, at the age of 52, from a rare hereditary heart condition her family never knew she had. The suddenness of her death left friends and fans in shock. Her former co-star, Danny Bonaduce, upon hearing the news, spoke through tears on his radio show, saying that everyone had assumed he would be the first of the cast to go, but in the end, it was Tracy, the gentlest, purest soul among them. Shirley Jones, her on-screen mother, also expressed her sorrow, saying that Suzanne was always the sweetest, most humble child on set, never forgetting to say thank you, not even for the smallest thing. No headlines, no scandals, no media frenzy. Suzanne Crough left the world the same way she had lived, quietly and kindly. In a Hollywood where fame so often comes hand in hand with tragedy, the story of little Tracy Partridge carries a different kind of beauty. Simple, brief, yet so pure that nothing could ever tarnish it. Today, in the memory of fans, Suzanne still lives on. The little girl with the tambourine, softly shaking the rhythm from her corner of the frame, smiling as if she never truly left the stage. Amid the vibrant, youthful cast of the Partridge Family, Dave Madden was the opposite energy. The middle-aged man who played Reuben Kincaid, the bumbling yet lovable manager, and the only true adult in a world of kids and musical mayhem. Yet, like many of his co-stars, Madden's real life was far more complicated and lonely than the laughter he brought to the screen. Born in 1931 in Sarnia, Ontario, Canada, Dave Madden moved with his parents to Indiana, USA, where he was raised. From a young age, he loved comedy and performing, but life first took him down a different path. He joined the U.S. Air Force. His years in service taught him discipline and also revealed his unique gift for making people laugh, even in the harshest circumstances. After leaving the military, he studied performing arts and began his career in small comedy clubs, eventually earning spots on The Ed Sullivan Show, the breakthrough that brought him national attention. By the early 1970s, Madden was cast as Reuben Kincaid in The Partridge Family, a role that came almost by accident but proved perfect. Surrounded by a family band of energetic kids, Madden's character became the embodiment of patience, dry wit, and perfectly timed exasperation. His restrained expressions and deadpan reactions created some of the show's most memorable humor. Viewers loved him not for big performances, but for the way he made chaos feel charming. After The Partridge Family ended, Dave Madden continued working in the entertainment industry, appearing in television series such as Alice, 1979 to 1985, Happy Days, and several other comedies. Over time, however, he quietly stepped away from Hollywood, settling in California to live a simple life, devoted to his 2 great passions, photography and writing. He even published a small memoir titled Reuben on Rye, a collection of witty, heartfelt reflections on his years behind the scenes and his fondness for the young cast who had once surrounded him. Dave Madden never behaved like a star. Friends said he was rarely seen without his camera, always eager to capture life's smallest moments, from street corners to birds perched on the studio window. For him, photography was perhaps a way to preserve the calm in a life that had once been too loud. On January 16, 2014, Dave Madden passed away in Florida at the age of 82, after a long battle with heart disease and cancer. When the news broke, Shirley Jones said, "Dave was the comic soul of the Partridge Family. He made us laugh every single day on set, and no one else could have replaced him. There was no grand funeral, just a few close friends saying goodbye in silence, the way he had lived. And perhaps, for millions who grew up watching the Partridge Family, Dave Madden will always remain Reuben Kincaid, the dry but gentle man who taught the world that sometimes, to make others happy, all you need to do is take a step back and smile. From fame to obscurity, from the bright stage lights to the quiet shadows behind them, the people who once sang "I Think I Love You" together have now gone their separate ways, each with a different path, each with a different melody. And perhaps that is the most beautiful tragedy of the Partridge Family. A family that seemed perfect on screen, but in real life could never hold on to happiness quite the same way. The Partridge Family became a legend, yet few people know that the show, often hailed as a defining piece of 1970s American pop culture, wasn't entirely fictional. The story of a family forming a band and touring the country was actually inspired by a real-life musical family called the Cowsills. The Cowsills were a family band from Rhode Island made up of Mother Barbara Cowsill and her 6 children, boys and girls alike. They rose to fame in the late 1960s with hits like The Rain, The Park, and Other Things, Indian Lake, We Can Fly, and Hair. Songs full of sweetness, optimism, and the wholesome spirit of family life. The blend of music, togetherness, and sincerity caught the attention of Screen Gems, Sony, who saw in them the perfect blueprint for a television series about the dream singing family. At first, Sony actually wanted the real Cowsills to star in the show, to portray their own lives on screen. But when production began, the studio decided to replace the real mother, Barbara Cowsill, with a professional actress. Their choice, Oscar-winning actress Shirley Jones. The family took this as an insult. Barbara wasn't just their mother, but the emotional and spiritual core of the band. They refused the offer outright. By then, the Cowsills were already a pop phenomenon in their own right. They had performed on The Ed Sullivan Show, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and other major variety programs, even starring in their own NBC special, A Family Thing, in 1969. But behind the cheerful image lay a far darker truth. Their father, Bud Cowsill, a strict former Navy officer, managed the group with an iron hand, emotionally abusive and controlling. When he discovered that his eldest son, Bill, had been smoking marijuana at the very time their hit Hair was topping the charts, Bud threw him out of the band and out of the family, leading to the group's breakup only months later. From that point, the Cowsill family's musical dream collapsed almost overnight. Mother Barbara passed away in 1985. Sons Bill and Barry later died from illness and the devastation of Hurricane Katrina. Even so, after all the losses, the remaining siblings occasionally reunited to perform, not for fame, but as family gatherings. As Bob Cowsill told the Las Vegas Sun, "We once went head-to-head with the Beatles, the Mamas and the Papas, and the Byrds, and even though our golden days are long gone, we're grateful our music still makes people happy." The television project they had refused moved forward without them. Sony cast new actors, with Shirley Jones as the mother and David Cassidy as the eldest son. In 1970, The Partridge Family premiered and became a worldwide cultural phenomenon, presenting the image of a perfect musical family while quietly eclipsing the darker, more painful reality of the family who had inspired it. Today, thanks to the 2011 documentary Family Band, The Cowsills Story, audiences can finally see that the Partridge Family was never pure invention. It was born from a real family, one for whom music was both a bond of love and a lasting wound after the lights faded. And perhaps that is why the Partridge Family endures. Not merely as a TV show, but as a mirror reflecting two sides of America, the sweet dream the public adored, and the bitter truth lived by those who made that dream real. Beneath the bright lights of the Partridge Family, few could have imagined that behind the cheerful scenes lay a real love story, fragile, fleeting, and filled with regret, between two young stars, Susan Dey and David Cassidy. When the show began production, Susan Dey was just 17, innocent, inexperienced, and quietly captivated by her charming co-star. David, already 20 and fast becoming a teen idol, had the charisma, the voice, and the confidence that drew her in completely. For years during filming, Susan secretly adored him, even though their characters played brother and sister on screen. Crew members recalled how her eyes always followed David, while he treated her kindly but kept his distance. He saw her as a younger sister, a painful irony that made her unspoken affection even harder to bear. It wasn't until the Partridge Family ended in 1974 that David finally returned Susan's feelings. They began seeing each other privately, and a romantic relationship started to bloom. But it would turn out to be a brief and complicated chapter. According to David's memoir, Susan had opened her heart to him completely, confessing how deeply she loved him and how afraid she was that her feelings might not be mutual. She later visited David at his private ranch in San Diego. There, as David recalled, Susan made it clear that she wanted to be closer. They began kissing and eventually ended up in bed together. Yet things didn't unfold as she might have hoped. David admitted that he still saw Susan as a friend, someone pure, kind, and different from the women he usually dated. Susan lacked the kind of flirtatiousness I always found exciting, he wrote. She wasn't bad. She wasn't wicked. She was good. But David also felt torn, afraid to reject her, yet uncomfortable with what was happening. It was one of those situations where you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, he recalled. He tried to ease the awkwardness by cracking jokes, and eventually, they both fell asleep. The next morning they did have sex, but as Cassidy later admitted, it was rather unsuccessful. Though they stayed in touch for a while, even appearing together on stage at the MTV Video Music Awards in the early 1990s. David's fears eventually came true. Taking the relationship to another level ruined our friendship, he admitted later. He confessed that he still loved Susan in a special kind of way, but new things could never go back to what they once were. In 1994, when David Cassidy released his memoir, Come On, Get Happy, the quiet tension between them erupted again. In the book, he revealed intimate details about their relationship, something that left Susan feeling deeply betrayed. To the public, it was a fascinating behind-the-scenes story, but to her, it was humiliation and the loss of trust. From that moment, she cut all contact with him. In the years that followed, whenever the Partridge Family reunions were organized, Susan was always the one who didn't show up. She turned down every interview and documentary invitation about the series. David later said he had sent her a letter of apology, but never got a reply. He admitted that he still cared for her, even though the words in his book had made reconciliation impossible. When David Cassidy passed away in 2017, the media wondered whether the two had ever made peace. The answer, it seems, was no. Those close to them confirmed that they hadn't spoken in decades. And so, the story of David and Susan became one of the saddest chapters in the Partridge family's legacy. A love born from closeness, destroyed by fame and pride, and buried in silence for the rest of their lives. If the Partridge family symbolized joy and togetherness, then their romance was its quiet counterpoint. A reminder that behind every on-screen smile, there are hearts that once broke in the shadows. Though The Partridge Family is remembered as a sweet, cheerful, and wholesome series, behind the TV lights and the frenzy surrounding David Cassidy lay a different world, one marked by chaos, tragedy, and emotional wounds that never fully healed. On May 26, 1974, at London's White City Stadium, built for the 1908 Olympics, David Cassidy, just 24 years old and one of the biggest teen idols in the world, took the stage for what would become the symbolic end of his teen idol era. More than 30,000 fans, mostly teenage girls, had queued and stood for hours just to see him in person. In front of the stage stood a metal barrier separating the audience from the performers. When Cassidy appeared, the screaming crowd surged forward, pushing and crushing those at the front against the fence. Panic spread. Many fell, suffocated, or were trampled. Paramedics and security worked frantically, pulling unconscious girls from the crowd, stretcher after stretcher, rushing them to a first aid area beneath the stands. Reports at the time recorded between 600 and 800 injuries, with dozens hospitalized. Among them was Bernadette Whelan, a 14-year-old fan whose bedroom walls were covered with David Cassidy posters. She was pulled from the crush unconscious and rushed to the hospital, but she never woke up. A few days later, she died. The coroner ruled her cause of death as asphyxiation due to compression injuries. Bernadette became the first known fatality at a pop concert in the UK. In the aftermath, chaos gave way to blame. Newspapers, organizers, security officials, and politicians all pointed fingers, debating high heels, teenage hysteria, or claims that the event had sufficient security. Some even accused fans of pretending to faint to get backstage. Yet the official inquiry was clear. Bernadette didn't die of a pre-existing condition. She died because she couldn't breathe. She was, in the report's words, a victim of a hysteria that was manufactured. For David Cassidy, the bitterest part was that during the concert he had no idea how bad things were. The show went on after the injured were carried away, a decision heavily criticized later. It wasn't until after the performance that he learned hundreds had been hurt, and one girl was near death. Devastated, he wanted to cancel his next concert in Manchester, but was persuaded to continue. Even so, the Manchester audience was visibly smaller. Many parents kept their children home after headlines screamed, "750 injured. Deadly teen idol frenzy." Cassidy sent flowers and a handwritten condolence letter to Bernadette's family. Her parents said they didn't blame him and believed their daughter wouldn't have wanted her idol to carry that guilt either. But for David, the tragedy left a permanent scar. In later interviews, he admitted that the White City disaster was one of the key reasons he stepped away from the teen idol image. It drained him emotionally, leaving him exhausted and profoundly lonely, even at the height of his fame. After that, he withdrew from major tours, his career gradually turning nostalgic, while White City Stadium itself never hosted another major concert, and was eventually demolished. It was the hidden darkness behind a face once painted as perfect by the media. A young man trapped between a clean-cut image, the crushing pressure of fame, and the tragedy that unfolded on the very night he thought would be the pinnacle of his success. Beyond the White City tragedy that haunted David Cassidy's life, the Partridge Family carried its own quiet scars, small details that revealed the gap between the glossy fantasy on screen and the truth behind it. The family's beloved dog, Simone, suddenly disappeared mid-series without explanation or farewell, leaving viewers puzzled for years. The Partridge home, that picture of suburban happiness, was actually a recycled set borrowed from other Screen Gems sitcoms like Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. The porch, Windows and fences were simply repainted and reused, a testament to Hollywood's thrifty make-believe machinery of the era. But behind those technical quirks, the set also became a crossroads for future stars. Farrah Fawcett, Mark Hamill, Jodie Foster, and even Johnny Cash all appeared in guest roles before becoming legends in their own right. Riding on that success, the studio once tried to take the Partridge Family to space with the animated spin-off The Partridge Family 2200 AD. But without the warmth of real music and family chemistry, the project failed and was canceled within months. The greatest irony of all, though, was that on screen, the entire Partridge family was portrayed as musically gifted. Yet in reality, only David Cassidy truly sang and performed. He recorded nearly all of the songs, carrying the musical soul of the show and bearing the full weight of the fame it created. Looking back now, from the 14-year-old girl who never returned home from the concert, to the missing dog, the borrowed house, the failed cartoon, and the young man consumed by his own stardom. The Partridge Family was never just a cheerful tale of a singing family. It was also a quiet reminder that behind every bright smile and catchy melody lies a very real price that someone, somewhere, had to pay. After the Partridge Family ended, Susan Dey began a new journey, quiet yet determined, to step out from under the enormous shadow of Laurie Partridge. She sought more mature, sometimes challenging and emotionally complex roles, as if to prove she was no longer just the good daughter from the Partridge Family. The 1980s marked a turning point when Susan made a remarkable comeback in the acclaimed legal drama L.A. Law, playing attorney Grace Van Owen, a strong, intelligent, and independent woman, yet one with the kind of human vulnerability that made her unforgettable. The role not only liberated her from her teenage image, but also earned her both an Emmy Award and a Golden Globe in 1988, restoring her to the ranks of Hollywood's most respected actresses. In the years that followed, she appeared in diverse projects such as Echo Park, Bed of Lies, Hawaii Five-0, and Third Watch. Though no longer at the peak of stardom, Susan maintained her grace and quiet magnetism, the charm of a woman who had outgrown her fame without losing herself. Yet behind that calm exterior were wounds she rarely revealed. Early in her career, she battled a severe eating disorder, at one point weighing barely 42 kilograms, around 93 pounds. Her former co-star, Danny Bonaduce, once admitted, "I was genuinely afraid for her health," a comment born more of compassion than curiosity. After 2004, Susan Dey withdrew completely from Hollywood. She declined all interviews, talk shows, and anniversary specials related to the Partridge Family. Choosing a private life in New York State, she avoided the spotlight entirely. Friends describe her as calm, modest, and content, someone who spends her time with family, reading, and engaging in quiet acts of charity. Notably, Susan has never spoken publicly about David Cassidy or her years on the Partridge Family. She neither denies nor revisits the past. She simply remains silent, as if those memories were something she chose to keep for herself. And perhaps that silence, measured, dignified, and without justification, is what makes her image so enduring. Susan Dey stands as a woman who once touched fame, was wounded by it, and ultimately chose peace and self-respect over the noise of nostalgia. Nearly half a century has passed since the Partridge Family said goodbye to its audience, yet the echoes and the fractures among its cast have never fully healed. The show that once symbolized joy, family, and music has become a memory both sweet and sorrowful for those who lived inside it. Among them, Susan Dey, the girl once adored by millions, chose a very different path: silence, withdrawal, and a quiet keeping of her memories. No explanations, no reunions, no tributes. She simply stepped away from Hollywood, living the rest of her life in peace, as if silence were the only shield strong enough to protect her from the memories that once broke her heart. Perhaps that isn't coldness, but maturity. A way of letting go, of preserving the small piece of peace left in a world that once shouted too loudly at her. What do you think of Susan Dey's decision? Was it cold distance, or an act of self-preservation from a painful past? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories hidden behind the golden curtain of classic Hollywood.